And we'll choose if we keep this cheers or not. But
Nah, I like it. Cheers.
good to have you finally, Coach Elias.
Thank you, Habibi. Great to be here.
Yani it's been a long time coming to have you on the show, but especially that you fucking. Can you imagine you coached me? You taught me how to play basketball 30 years ago.
That's not saying much. I'm not. It's not one of my strong points, but sure.
Actually, it's true. Both me and your sister, in fact, we were on the same team, right?
That's true. And I remember
Shout out to Rana
very
and Nadim.
clearly.
Yeah.
La to Rana, yeah. I remember very clearly. We were in Little League, and we had to alternate between players in between the quarters.
Yeah.
You couldn't put the same players throughout the quarters.
Yeah.
And you and my sister were the best players on the team. So I wanted to have you in all the quarters, and it became too obvious. And then you had to strategize about whether you put them in the first quarter and the fourth, or the second and third to catch up, depending on the match. Remember that?
Yeah.
But you were a very good player, so I have to say that.
To avoid nepotism, yeah, because by the way, also at one point I think was it the La Terrace team, my dad's restaurant, the sponsor.
It was La Terrace.
Yeah, so nepotism was all over the yeah, and between you being the coach where your sister plays and my dad being the sponsor of the team, we had to make sure nobody gets upset.
Absolutely, and we had a celebratory dinner at La Terrace, I think, even though we came in last place.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, absolutely.
You came in last place.
And it was a fantastic restaurant.
Dude, you know that I still suffer from my ankle just most strains that I've had because I used to be a center. I used to I was the rebounder basically.
You were tall.
I was tall and fat and everything you need a center to be, like the Jokic of the Little League. But I rolled my ankle like maybe I think fucking 10 times in 2 years, and until now I have like bad ankles.
But that wasn't on my watch.
No, probably not.
That's after. I taught good basketball.
Now that we're on this point, here's a bill for my medical.
The statute of limitations, I think, right?
Yeah, it's been 20 years. Yeah, I guess so. A quick background about you as Elias, the man, the father, the husband, Elias, the professional, and then we can get into the details. So, correct me if I'm wrong. Kearney, initially, consulting.
Yes. In the middle of the journey, yes. So originally, Bechtel in the US. That's where I started my career.
Oh, okay.
Bechtel is a large EPC contractor. It's responsible for building some of the most iconic projects globally. I started there, then moved to the region, and that's where consulting came into the picture. And it was Kearney, yes.
And then you got me that interview at Kearney, and the rest is history. So thank you for you kind of shaped my career in a butterfly effect.
I remember that vaguely, but I remember that. And I said, come to consulting, it's going to do wonders for you. And I still stand by it. I think it's a great place to start your career with.
100%. Anyway, I was at Delta Partners, and I got laid off in the 2008 crisis. Then I passed my CV to Adonis Shami, who then knows you. And then somehow I got interviewed by Dirk Buchta and Carl Deutsch. I don't know if they're still alive, either one of them.
I'm not sure, but they were the ones in the office back then, yes.
And then, actually, now that I think about it, if you think about consulting at the time, you were, I think, an associate or a manager. Sheikh Fahim, or Fahim, as he's colloquially known. Mauricio was a manager. Isabel was an associate. And
Absolutely.
all of them are now partners.
I think Mauricio is the managing partner for the office here and the region, I think. Isabel is a partner, Rob is a partner, so all of them
Mukund is head of the financial practice globally.
Yeah, they were all my cohort, great people. Anybody who can stick it this long deserve that for sure.
100%. But if you've ever worked with a consulting firm or any new team in consulting recently, do you feel there's a deterioration in quality compared what it meant to be an associate and a manager back then in 2009, 2008, compared to what it means to be an associate now? It feels like comparing a principal to an analyst almost, even though they were both associates. Do you have any?
I'm not sure I've experienced that yet, but I do go back to the alumni events every now and then. I haven't seen you there in a while.
I've seen a picture of you on LinkedIn.
Yeah. So, and I was talking to, maybe I shouldn't talk about this on the recording, but we're just in general comparing our generation with the newer generation, and their I wouldn't call it work ethic, but their outlook on what it is to be a consultant. I remember I come from an era where, you just took notes, did what you were told, served the hours, regardless of how long they were. I remember at Kearney, one specific project, I was up till 3, 4 in the morning, and the last, 3 hours were about making copies and, things that I don't know if they're as acceptable today with this young cohort.
Entitled cohort.
You want to call it entitled? Maybe they've got a better outlook on life than we did.
Yeah, actually, maybe that's another way to look at it.
Right?
Yeah.
I think. I mean, I look back and I wish I spoke more often because it was, exploitation to a certain extent. But that was the culture we were brought up in.
We accepted the fact that we had to grind it out because that's, I guess, baby boomers, our parents before us.
That's what we were taught, absolutely.
And we did it happily, and here we are successful, alhamdulillah, thank God. And you're right that if you look at today's generation, whether it's the ones who are in consulting or out of consulting, they're either entitled and spoiled and brats, that's one way to look at it, or they are more enlightened than we were, and they know what matters, like they're ahead of us. It's one of the two. It could be both as well.
I err on the side of they're more enlightened because what they're showing us today, I'm starting to realize in my mid-40s.
Yeah.
Right?
I have that with my nephew and my nieces.
So
yeah.
I would say they are the enlightened ones, and we're the the ones that were just too conventional, never questioned the status quo, just went with whatever we were told because this was the right trajectory and right path to take to achieve whatever it is that they told you should achieve. I think they got it right. Now, I mean, that's a controversial topic because then you start talking about, well, you need to go through the effort, you need to go through the hard work. And that's not to say that they're not going through the hard work and effort. They're just doing it on their own terms. They're doing it in a way that balances, the joys of life that, you and I, or at least I, didn't get to see when I was in my 20s. And
you had to bite the bullet.
You had to bite the bullet and go. Yeah. So, no, I think they're the enlightened. I'll stand on that camp.
I like it too. I often have conversations with my nephew because I don't have any kids. You do. And he's 26. So I'm the uncle who's supposed to chime in and, and when he talks to me, I need to balance my role as the responsible uncle who needs to give him the right advice of, bro, you gotta grind it out. Like, life's not easy. You think you got it easy right now, but wait till you're older, And then he actually drops bombs of wisdom on me, and I didn't think like that then when I was your age, but I'm thinking about that now.
Isn't that awesome?
It is awesome, yeah. But at the same time, it's dangerous. I feel like I can't let him. I feel like if I just let him go on his own path, what if he's 40 and he's just taking it easy on himself?
What if he knows? What if he's got the formula right? Speaking of your nephew, I'll tell you about my own daughter, who's 9. And sometimes she says things to me that just, they wake me up. She sounds more mature than I did in my 30s.
Yeah.
I mean, she just, she's spot on.
Yeah.
Why are you stressing? Why are you stressing about this? The other day she said to me, can you control this? I said, no. She's like, why are you stressing about it?
Wow. 9-year-old.
I mean, that's something I started saying 2 years ago.
By the way, beautiful name, Badia.
Badia, yeah.
Do you know any other Badias?
I've heard of other Badias. I don't personally know other Badias, no.
So for anybody listening who doesn't understand Arabic, Badia means desert. It has a beautiful meaning of the desert, right?
Absolutely, the Jordanian desert specifically.
Yeah.
And I've come to understand that it also means unique.
Yeah. Oh, is that right?
Yes.
I didn't know
which
that.
Which is, very appropriate to
because Bidaya?
مش عارف if that's from Bidaya or I didn't go deep into it, but.
Well, hey, why is the daughter amazing? That's actually it's incredible how kids at Badia's age, older, sometimes even younger, they'll drop bombs of wisdom that leave you in awe. Huh?
They do. So you speak to a lot of people my age, I presume, and I wonder if you hear that from them as well, that they're waking up, late. I don't want to say late in the game, but at a later age than you're probably supposed to wake up and realize these important aspects in life.
Yeah.
I'm seeing it with my generation. It's probably because we've been so focused and so, heads in the sand about how to go about life.
Yeah.
There's a playbook that you were told about, and you needed to follow it.
You know who told me something that was, I thought, extremely profound? Because I never thought about it this way until he said it to me, because we both know this guy, so Fahim Al-Qasmi, Sheikh Fahim, who is also a father, right? And then I think at one point I had him on the podcast, we chatted, and then towards the end of it, we spoke about like, how do you plan to raise your kids? Or I can't remember exactly what I asked him about. It was more about, as you think about your kids and their future, what are the priorities? And normally you would expect answers like doctor, lawyer, engineer if you were conventional, and then AI, or I don't know what the hell, whatever the trend is. Instead, what he told me is like, here are the 4 major problems that will probably still exist 20, 30 years from now. Water, environment,
food,
social inequality, whatever. So he didn't approach it from, he looked at the end, not the mean. He didn't think doctor, engineer. He looked at the problems that will exist, and that's how he wants to direct his kids. Brilliant.
He's a true consultant.
Yes. By the way, he's actually one of the smartest, like,
he is.
He's such a good example of the locals.
Fahim used to because he used to be at the firm at Kearney, but he was the strongest weapon that Kearney had, because he's an Emirati, he's a sheikh, and he's multilingual. And, he'd sit in a German setting, he'd understand German.
Because his mother is German.
Yeah. He spoke French, English, Arabic. Man, you'd put him in a meeting and he'd sit there and bring everything out of it.
Yeah.
He's awesome.
Yeah.
But he's right. Look at what the problems are going to be and try to direct your kids towards solving those, I think is a good one.
Doesn't matter how, as long as they're directed towards them.
Yes, without pushing them. I mean, if you look at these problems inherently, how do you fix them? You need, is it engineers? Do you need, consultants? Not sure. Do you need, coders? But again, go back a few steps. I don't know if it's about pushing them into a certain direction anymore. I think it's more about. This is going to sound cliche, but empowering them. Looking at there's a quote I read somewhere that really resonated with me. It said, if your child is bad at math but good at tennis, you don't get a math tutor. You get a tennis coach.
Yeah.
So that's the aspect.
Double down on your strengths.
You double down on the strength. Absolutely. I like it. And I think that's the new way, or at least the way I try to. Look at raising kids today.
It's exactly like the flow model that says you're the top right. This is consultant talk, but I'll use it anyway. The top right quadrant, which is the optimal space to be in the flow matrix, is where you're good at and where the challenge is the highest. And if you're there, then that's your sweet spot, basically, right?
Absolutely agree with that.
Amazing. All right. So we went over the concept. So
go back to investing. You wanted to ask me about investing. Yeah. So
I wanted to make sure that I give the
ADHD in action. You and me.
Oh my God. Do you think we balance each other out, or is it like it has a multiple effect?
I think we're to the power of kind of combination.
My God, ADHD, diagnosed at an older age. I didn't know I had ADHD when I was younger, by the way. I think I picked it up at a young...
I don't think any of us knew, but I'm sure all of us did. Or a lot of us did.
But you know what? I love it. Whatever, for what it's worth, whatever that thing is that's ADHD, with all its flaws, I'll take it. I think its pros outweighs its cons.
It's a superpower. You just need to find a way to channel it correctly.
Yeah.
Right?
So I'll tell you about this retreat I did later on in the podcast, which is... we'll come back to that. Okay. A lot of things to cover. But so I want to get back to the investment, but I wanted to make sure that I also...
this tea is very good, by the way.
I'm glad you're enjoying it, yeah. It's a local tea from Jordan, basically. So you started off in consulting, and here's why I like this podcast so much, or like any podcast, but obviously this is like the podcast that I host. I thought I know you, and I do know you, but I didn't know that you're such a startup guy, because like I know you're in consulting. I know you're managing director for the last 10 years or so at Eagle Investments. But then I briefly went over your LinkedIn, which I never would do with somebody I know. And turns out you were an Endeavor mentor. You are on the board
board of a few companies. Some startups, some SMEs, some a bit more established.
One of them is a co-living startup in India.
Yes, this is a more recent one. This is more work related. I'll keep that on the side. But yeah, this is our first foray into a private market deal in India. We've been investing in the public securities market in India for a while, and I'd like to say that we've been talking about the Indian growth story for a long time coming, and it's been there. So we've been investing in public equities there for a while, and we did good. But in private markets, that's a more recent endeavor.
The reason why it caught my attention is because from the little bit of reading that I did on it just today before you came, it looked like it was about co-living and, having non-real estate locations being leased out for, I guess, students, professionals, young men and women. And I'm someone who has only recently realized, having lived in Dubai for about 17 years now, including 3 years in New York and San Francisco and London. So I got to see what it means to have nature, the parks in London, San Francisco, the hills. New York is a big city like Dubai. But when I saw, what is it called? The startup in India?
Istara.
Istara. I didn't know how to pronounce it. Istara. I sort of Istihara.
Istihara.
Istara.
Istara.
The importance of being in an environment where you work, where you study, where you live, that the moment you step out of that brick and mortar house or office that you're in an environment that is conducive to whatever you're doing in life, how important that is. I didn't realize that until
Community building.
As well as community,
Absolutely.
right? Which is ironically one of the things that I have to admit, Dubai has a community, has the connections, especially if you have a good network and all of that. But the environment, the nature, all the things that I feel like if you co-locate to somewhere like India, where you have nature, or a place that has more entrepreneurs, if that's what you are, or digital nomads, did this part of investing or being a board member of Istara, did that get you thinking and make you compare and contrast like your own life in Dubai, the times that you might have low energy versus like how it would be if you were, for example, somewhere else surrounded?
All the time. Not all the time, but from a community, I mean, I've been in Dubai for a very long time, and I think I have a community of friends, I have a community of colleagues, you included, who have been here for a while, and Dubai has changed. It's become larger, just like any other city. As it grows, you get more separated neighborhoods, right? You have to start picking where you live and kind of existing in that area. So we've seen that happen in Dubai. Maybe brought a sense of detachment to a certain extent, but on the contrary, I think it's also makes you narrow down to a neighborhood and start establishing a new community in that neighborhood. And it made me think about Dubai. It made me think about other places. But I haven't lived in many places like you did. I lived in the U.S. I lived in Jordan. I lived in the UAE. That's about it in terms of long term. And I certainly prefer living here than most other places.
But does that have to do with Dubai or the fact that you have like a lovely family, God bless, wife, kids? How much, to what extent do you attribute your love to Dubai to the family that you're surrounded with? I'm sure your friends and colleagues, but like really like the family part of the equation. Say you were single, for example. You must have some single friends. I'm one of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you ever sit and think, if I was still a single man, obviously,
where would I be?
Charismatic, good-looking man, successful, everything you need to be to have a lot of fun in Dubai if you want to. And now, instead, you're locked up. No, I'm sure. No. First of all, I positively envy you.
Editing that out.
I positively envy you, first of all, because I think it's incredible to be a man or a woman with family, with kids. Yani, as they say in Arabic, sunnat al-hayah. It's, you laugh at me if you heard me say this like 5 years ago or 10 years ago, but like as of recent, I'm starting to actually realize how important that is.
If you asked me to introduce yourself at the beginning of the podcast, which you did not, you just went into try to decipher what my background was. But I would say today, I would introduce myself as a father, a husband, and then an income earner to support that.
Amazing.
Right? So this is what defines me today. This is what I'd like defining me today.
So that's important. You like that it defines it.
Absolutely. And, look, I have this discussion with a lot of colleagues who are single and young and going through this whole question of, should I get married? Should I just have a partner? Do I want kids? And I get it. Life is much more difficult today in terms of cost of living, in terms of deciding whether or not to have kids, whether, finding a partner, I think is more difficult today.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's an awareness issue. We are so blind about it back then, or we just, as you said, Sunnat al-Haya, we just jumped into it. But I have this discussion with them all the time. And look, it's a very, very personal discussion. It's a very personal decision. It's a very, it depends on circumstances. If I was single today in Dubai, would I enjoy it? Of course, you'd enjoy Dubai being single.
Yeah.
You'd enjoy being single anywhere. But would I prefer being single than being married with kids? No, I definitely prefer being married with kids. Absolutely. No, and I'll turn this back to you.
Yeah,
I mean,
go
you're look. It's what is it about being single or not being single that bothers you or keeps you up at night, or why do you think along those lines? Why isn't it not I'm enjoying my life today as who I am. I'm working on myself. Whatever comes along, comes along.
Yeah.
It's as everybody's talking about today. It's the energy you exude, the energies that you receive.
Yeah. And look, I'm in a particularly, without going into the details of my situation, but my situation is particularly complex in that the love of my life, and she still is, and we're still working together, and we're in close touch. But 9 years, started companies together, lived in different cities, have a dog, almost had a family. Like there's a long history. So what keeps me up at night is not so much the overarching question of having a family, but obviously, anyway. But I don't want to make this about my particular example. But what I do want to answer your question without necessarily focusing on my example, I get how men in their late 30s and in their 40s and maybe even in their 50s, when you hear about all these suicides, when you hear about mental health issues, depression, especially those who have it, including those who have families, right? I recently made a video about Chester from Lincoln Park, Anthony Bourdain, all these guys killed themselves. They had kids, they were successful. And it doesn't keep me up at night as much as it makes me realize how it's just such a great way to resolve the purpose of life when you have that purpose. You don't have to worry about sorting out what am I going to do. You have a wife, you have kids. I like to believe men are the purpose of a man, or the purpose of human, but specifically men, is to protect, provide, and preside, without all the controversy around the last one. Because in the world of feminism, I think that it might be perceived negatively. I have my own version of what it means to preside that I'm comfortable with, as somebody who has 3 sisters and no brothers, and so. But to protect, provide, and preside, if you don't have that because you don't have a family, yeah, of course you can find yourself in the abyss. And
Look, it is a more lonely word for sure. I think you can talk about what has evolved over the past, at least in my lifetime, over the past 30 years, that have shifted the world from a more community-driven to a more individualistic society. There's many reasons for that. There's a lot of research and a lot of talk today about depression among males.
yeah,
And that's because they lack that connection, lack that friendships. I mean, we look at friendships, male friendships. You don't have, males that you can just pick up the phone and call and say, look, I'm not feeling well today. I'm feeling down today. What do I do about it? You just don't have that, right? As much as we'd like to think that it exists, maybe in this part of the world, less so, but it's not there to an extent. And I get that. And this is where the attachment comes in. And this is where what you're describing is, I want to feel I have that, that wholesome life around me, which includes, a partner and kids. And yes, I agree with that. I think this is part of the reason why, you choose to get married and you choose to have a family, because that brings out the essence of what life is about to certain people. Other people may not agree with that. To me, it certainly does, because at the end of the day, if let's say you're a very career-oriented person, all you care about is progression in work and monetary benefits that come with that, etc. The jury's still out. There are people who would just say, I can keep doing this forever, and others would say you get to a certain point in time and where it's lonely at the top. Who do I share it with? Who do I enjoy this success with? And
الجنة بلا ناس بلا ما
ما
بتنداس.
بتنداس 100%. And there's two ends to the spectrum, right? في عندك the ones that say, well, let me just go through life focused on career, and then when I am successful, then I'll go build that family around it, and more often than not, it's probably too late.
You take it for granted,
Or you take it for granted, or it becomes okay. I'm at a later stage in my life that I'm having difficulty, accepting people or bringing in people to my life. The other side of the spectrum is no. I'll marry young. I'll have a family, but then it puts financial stress on you. It takes away from your time to perhaps progress in your career the way you want to. So it's a balance. It really is a balance.
It is, and I was always hoping that, for me at least, love comes first, and then the decision to marry. That love comes second. Not like I need to get married. Let me look for somebody. And that's not wrong. I mean, that's how a lot of people go about it. In fact, one of the things that I've recently noticed, and times are changing. Yani, there was a time when, I guess, in our part of the world, in the Middle East, it was like, you'd have the woman, like there's always that like worry that women have to get married, because if she doesn't get married at a certain age, there was all that stress. And so, and then the men had to marry because it was not acceptable for them to get in relationships or have sex or any of that stuff unless they were married. So there was some congruence to the symbiotic arrangement that was needed. But as of the last 10, 20, 30 years, I don't know, I mean, I guess recent history, I feel like men don't care to get married because they're short-sighted. They think, okay, whatever, I'll just date, I'll hook up, I'll have fun. And what's turning out, like there's a bunch of girls in my own class and my own high school, older than me, younger than me, beautiful, smart, good families, you name it. And lack of men who are willing to step up and get married. And they're around, they're single, they're there. And then those who do get married, not to generalize, but a lot of those men who do eventually get married, they are doing what used to happen. Like previously, I guess it's a bit of a stereotype, but it's a stereotype because it's somewhat true. You would find women like marrying into a rich man, a powerful man, somebody from a good family, because she'll find stability with that man. Now it's the other way around. Now you find men marrying,
looking for stability.
No, yeah, you'll find you'll find a girl marrying a guy out of her league, like by social, like maybe he's like a sexy man who's successful. Like maybe he's not successful probably, but he's just like a guy that like, what is this guy doing with this girl? Like, and then you realize that this guy is just having a shortcut to his own life by marrying into a rich woman who he would have probably never looked at before. And I don't know how many stories like that you hear, but I hear a lot of these stories.
Really?
I constantly find myself hearing about friends of mine who have married women. I was like, he married her? Like, how did that happen? And like, I get it. He's a bit of a bum and she's like probably going to be rich soon when her parents, and it starts to make sense. And
so from her point of view, that's love.
From her point of view, she's like, I got married, Women want to get married a lot,
Yeah, but you think,
this is very controversial what we're talking about.
No, absolutely. So we're probably going to cut all of this out. But
or not. Look, I'm just saying, it seems to be like that there are a lot of men marrying opportunistically, is what I'm trying to say, and who want to make sure that they're in a comfortable place financially, so they go and marry into a woman that they wouldn't have married out of love.
How sustainable is this?
Of course, it's not sustainable.
Okay, so it's short-sighted, and actually, this is one of the topics I was thinking along the way coming to here. بطلنا نعرف نحكي. Along the way coming here,
yeah, it's okay.
The world, this is one of the things I'm struggling with today in my mid-40s, thinking about what has changed in the world between when I was growing up to today. And it feels like the world is much more transactional, right? It's much more short-sighted. People engage in activities or events that give instant gratification.
Yeah.
Why is that? what has changed?
Oh,
I'm asking.
I thought it's a rhetorical
No,
question.
I mean, is it, first of all, is it a trend that you're seeing as well, or is it just me
Yeah.
generalizing, or me trying to, make sense of my own life and what's changing in it? Or maybe it's Dubai, maybe where we live.
I think options are more scarce. Like people have options. They don't mind marrying. What's the worst case? I'll get divorced. Everybody else around me is getting divorced. Like I think that's how people are thinking about it. I'll take this job. If I don't like it, I'll quit. Other jobs.
It's because options are plentiful.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, at least again in our elitist. I mean, thank God we're in a world in a part of a socioeconomic place where we can make choices and take risks because we know that if they go wrong, I mean, nobody wants to get married and get divorced. But like with jobs, for example, like what's the worst case? You leave your job, you'd probably find another job. But that's not. I don't think you can say the same thing about like literally 99% of the people around the world. And we live in a bit of a bubble. Not only you and I coming from good families, well educated, alhamdulillah, thank God, but like we live in Dubai, but like, I mean, that is really this. I think what you're referring to right now is this bubble that is the 1%, right? You don't think so?
I'm not sure. Yani you look at maybe you're right. I mean, I just look at relationship building, right? In business and personally, I don't see the longevity of relationships that people strived for back when I was growing up. Commercially, it's much more transactional, right? We back when I was starting my career, you invested a lot of time in the relationship, regardless of what fruits it brought, because that relationship had meaning on a personal level, or it had meaning on a friendship level. Today, it's what can I get out of that person? What can I get out of that transaction? If I don't see the immediate value,
it's very opportunistic.
I shift my time. I shift my focus to something else, and I think there's a much bigger consequences that come out of this, which are negatively impacting. Going back to the topic we were talking about, to how males or anyone, males or females, perceive relationships today, and perceive the idea of getting married, and perceive the idea of having a family, etc. Anyway, I think this part we're gonna.
Yeah, but we don't need to. Man, listen. I mean, some of the best parts of the podcast are those that get a little bit into murky waters. So we'll leave it out if we want to. But let's talk freely about it until we decide any. بس مثلا one thing I've also noticed is that if you're cold, I can turn up the.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm perfect.
One thing I hate seeing is how relaxed. I've always enjoyed a little bit of the standard, like the classic patriarchy, not the like toxic masculinity or whatever that means, but I've always enjoyed the idea of the man leading when it comes to somebody having to take a bullet metaphorically for the family or providing and so on. And I'm just seeing more and more often men bumming out and women grinding it out. And I'm all for the feminism movement, but I think like it's convenient for some men.
But is it
not like
in certain places? I mean, look, in certain cultures that I've heard about that. But do you see that here in Dubai?
Yeah. In Dubai, in the Middle East, in Jordan, man. Like there are men that I'm seeing marrying into women that I know they would have never married.
I think that's short term. I think it's. Sure. I think it goes back to the transactional idea. Thoughts we're talking about. It's not sustainable.
Then let's go back to the investment part.
Let's go to the investment.
Maybe, I don't know if you have, by the way, he's going to give you a lot of kisses.
Good. I love Vito.
But you can push him away anytime he gets.
He's great. Good boy, Vito.
And this is him.
Has he liked any of the other guys?
Oh yeah. He's in every.
I shouldn't feel that special.
No, he's a Labrador. He doesn't. He's agnostic when it comes to.
Vito,
settle down, my boy. Vito. Hey, Vito, enough, my boy. Settle down. Stay, my boy.
Yeah.
Stay. You already expressed your love. Can I just say I like that you chose Miles Davis as the record behind you. لأنه I'm a big jazz fan. I kind of recently got a piano. I wanna pick up my old hobbies again. Cool choice, man.
Thanks, Habibi. Jazz is great.
Yeah, I mean New York. I mean, you can take
US, US taught me jazz.
George Washington.
Yeah.
But I mean jazz in the US. You can take the man out of the US, but you can't take the US out of the man, perhaps. So, okay, here's my question, and maybe it's going to be a short one or a long one. Abraj is a crazy story because when it comes to investments, corruption, crazy stories that you hear. I was hoping to see if you, right off the top of your head, I don't know if you want to disguise, if there's even a story that you can think of, and if you want to disguise it, a crazy story that you've seen between the startups to your current, throughout your entire career. Excuse me. Any story that you find particularly crazy for any reason, either because it was a major investment that was based on everything that is outside of the textbook of investments, or because of the corruption, or because of the politics, or of like, is there a story that that makes you like just think about like how?
And I'm the most boring person when it comes to this. I'll tell you why. Very simply, investing over the past, in the recent history, has taken on a whole new, concept in people's mind, and it's quick riches, easy to make money. And that's probably because of, I don't want to go there, but the Bitcoin crazes,
Let's go there.
Yeah, I know nothing about Bitcoin. That's the only asset class that I have not delved into, that I don't understand.
But yeah, the drivers are all the same: inflation, money printing, all of that, right?
Probably. لا بس what I was going to say is and I'm a Berkshire, Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett kind of student in terms of compounding over time. And that's important for people to understand when it comes to investing, because there's no shortcuts to it. You might have a shortcut, you might have an instant hit with a startup, but if the fundamentals are not there, eventually you're going to have a pop, right? So these crazy stories that happened, look, we've been in investments that did multiple X within a couple of years because of existential factors, right? Because people were throwing money at a certain sector. But if you go back to the Berkshire Hathaway model, to the Warren Buffett model, it's really about compounding over time. Warren Buffett's wealth was all created post 65, when he was 65 and above. And that's 80% of his wealth, actually. That came from the compounding effect of buying these value investing, buying these undervalued or real businesses that had real fundamentals, grew over time at a pace of, GDP growth plus inflation plus, a few percentage points above that. So, and I come from that school of thought.
You mind if we just clarify? Because I know value investing, I know what it means, I know you know what it means, versus growth investing, right? So like these are the two typical like usually you either go into a growth, non-dividend paying stock, for example, that's growth, and then value investing, I think.
Value investing is, not about just being more mature companies that are growing at a slower pace, but it's really about undervalued companies given the fundamentals of the company. Growth is more about obviously the ones that are scaling up, the ones that are not dividend paying, obviously because they're reinvesting any cash flow that they're producing, and they tend to be in the short term,
Capital burning.
Probably quicker, faster growth, and to many more valuable. There's probably an underlying theme behind them, maybe driven by technology or driven by some tailwinds that exist because of the circumstance you're in. But I'm talking about long-term, slow-paced, turtle growth that comes from having the fundamentals right.
Marathon, not a sprint.
Marathon, not a sprint. Yeah. Absolutely.
So in the world of, like, because I was referring to Abraj, and for anybody that knows about Abraj Capital, there was corruption, to put it lightly. The world of investments in general, whether you're buying stocks, crypto, investing straight up in a startup, what sucks usually is when people feel like they're doing everything right, and still they don't win, and it's because of all those other factors that depending on which region, there's always this politics, manipulation. It's annoying because it almost feels like it's an unfair game, And
What are you referring to? Yeah.
just in general, like for example, like let's say you buy a stock that you think has all the right fundamentals, and because the big whales in that, who are the big deep pockets that own it, can fluctuate, can play around with the value of the stock, and then you don't know what the fuck you're doing.
But
That's
ideally,
that's the classic version, right? Like,
right. But that's I mean, look. Ideally, if you're investing in a large enough market, let's say in the U.S., you would have less of that influence. You won't have that influence by definition because of how deep the markets are, because of how large the volume of trading is, because of how big the companies are. No single investor can make that kind of impact on the stock price. And this is the difference between investing in developed market versus emerging market. Emerging market comes with that risk, the fact that there is stock manipulation, or it could be stock manipulation because of one or two major investors in it. But if you
until like the Reddit AMC and what's it called what do you call them?
GameStop,
yeah. These guys showed how you can come together as individuals and still.
Absolutely, that was when was that? 2022 started.
Yeah. And more power to them, honestly, by the way.
100%.
Yeah.
But that's, I mean, I wouldn't call that investing. That's more gambling, trading,
manipulation, but like coming together, collusion, or
Yes, it's gambling.
Yeah.
It's gambling. It's short-term, transactional. Back to our conversation. Investing is really buying an asset and that you believe in its fundamentals, believe in its growth story, believe in its, the macro environment it plays in, and see it through, over a long period of time.
Fair. And earlier, I was sharing with you my bullish stance on Chinese electric vehicles as a publicly traded equities and all of that. And so you were referring to Alibaba, and you were like, you seem bullish about Alibaba.
No, I was referring to Alibaba because everybody seems to be looking at Alibaba as an e-commerce play, an undervalued. I shouldn't talk about, by the way, this is not financial advice.
Insider information?
No, not at all. But this is not financial advice. I'm not giving any financial advice by any means. No, but we're talking about China as a market, whether or not to invest in it right now.
Yeah.
The geopolitics that's happening. There's a lot of
which president will win will define a lot of that.
100%. I mean, there's a lot of talk about what a Trump presidency would mean to China.
Delisting of stocks, whatnot.
Absolutely, and decoupling of the trade environment in general with China. And these are the things that you're referring to, that you think you do everything right, and then some external event happens and just changes things. But again, it's a time it's a time frame issue. I always we talk about this in the community that we live in within investing. We talk about this all the time. Investing is about your ability to stay in the market for as long as possible.
Yeah.
Everybody's talking about this now. It's time in the market, not timing the market.
Resilience, right? And endurance.
Endurance. I think it's about time in the market. It's about being there for the long term. This is the only way to build, a proper story with a company, because you're going to have these short-term fluctuations,
volatilities,
and volatility that happens.
But you know what? And that's why I like a lot. And you and I haven't spoken about this yet. So let me see if this will spark an interesting conversation. Have you heard of one of the two companies? One is called Kelshi, which is the Lebanese pronunciation of Kulshi. And the equivalent of that, but using crypto, because these guys are fiat. They took them 5 years. I know the founders. I spoke with them a few times. They just got regulated by the CFDC in the US, and whoever regulates. So I'll talk about Kelshi in a second, but there's Polymarket as well. So have you heard of?
Okay. I have not.
So what these guys have done, basically, you're gonna love this. So their premise is that we all buy stocks, options, commodities, calls, puts, spreads, whatever you want to do it, based on multiple variables that will ultimately increase or decrease the price of a certain asset or. So what these guys did, again, Kelshi and Polymarket, same concept. One does cryptocurrency, one does fiat. They just make you bet on outcomes of variables that will eventually affect the instrument that you will trade. So, for example, there is a market that says bet on who's going to win the elections, Trump or Kamala. Yeah. There's another market that says
there's weather betting.
There's well, they're betting too,
Yeah.
right? So they take so they don't say they admit what the reason I like them so much, aside of the fact that I'm a gambler, like
Yeah.
I enjoy
Oh,
it.
yeah, I want to get back to that subject, by the way.
We will-
Didn't you have a stint
Yeah,
playing poker?
I did. I had a stint. I still play poker.
No, but you went pro at some point in time.
I
didn't
still
you?
am. I still am. Yeah. I mean, when I say I went pro, I play in professional tournaments.
Yeah.
And but like I don't make a living like these guys do. Like
Right.
I have a company and all of that. So I'm more of a recreational player.
Okay.
But I play professionally with Ivy and Negrano and all those guys. I have played with them, by the way. It's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, I have.
With the cap and sunglasses on.
Sometimes,
Actually,
yeah.
can we go there? That's more fun.
Sure,
that's,
sure.
That's more interesting to talk about crypto.
Sure. No, we're not going to talk about crypto.
Yeah.
So I wanted to well, I guess the point about Kelchi and Polymarket is that they just make you bet straight on things that eventually affect the NASDAQ or the S&P. Because like if you are trying to wait for certain news and then go and buy or sell or short or whatever it is, an instrument, you can just like bet on the outcome itself. For
Right.
example, you can bet, and it's not ethical, will Israel invade Lebanon?
Yeah.
And whatever impact that will have on the markets, rather than trying to trade the market based on that event, just bet on that event.
Right.
So that's what these guys are doing, which I find to be unethical on that particular market. But in general, the idea of betting on specific variables to be much more straightforward,
But that's-
manipulation free.
That it's funny how everything is going back to the same conversation about instant gratification and quick wins. This is because they're betting on a human nature that people just want to bet about on an outcome. This is not investing. This is gambling. That
Well,
really
but
is gambling.
Okay,
If you don't buy into a company because you're trying to bet on whether or not China will invade Taiwan.
Yeah.
Right. You're buying a company because you're betting on the fact that the company itself is going to perform well. It has a product that people like, and it will sell and it will grow, and etc.
So that's investing.
That's
So,
investing.
but trading, when we talk about trading, buying and selling and shorting and buying puts and calls and whatever it is on the NASDAQ, on an ETF, wherever it is, and then waiting to hear 4 or 5 pieces of news and then trying to think about what does that mean about the NASDAQ.
So they're playing the shortcut.
They
Don't bet on
which is
that,
not,
bet on the outcome.
it's not instant gratification. I think it's just like avoiding manipulation. That's what I like about it. It's like,
Okay. I see where you're
you
coming
know what I
from.
mean? Because like all these things can happen that means the NASDAQ should pump, and yet it doesn't. And why? Because somebody fucking dumps. Like, I don't know. I just think it's a brilliant entrepreneurial concept, which says like, if you want to bet on one variable that links to then how the market moves, just bet on that variable. And
I'm giving you that variable. to
it's
bet
not
on.
investing, it's
Yeah.
trading. I'm talking about
Yeah.
trading purely. So it's just seems very cool. I think we should have one in the region. I'd like to start it myself.
Yeah,
actually.
that's
So-
interesting. Actually, you'll have a lot of takers on that for sure.
Tayyip, so you wanted to ask me about poker?
I wanted to ask you, and I remember the basketball playing Yazan, and
Yeah.
then I came and visited you in New York. You were an entrepreneur at some point in time. You still are an entrepreneur, but you were creating a business. I forgot what it was.
Like
you
a
were
online debate platform.
online debate platform, which I thought was a phenomenal idea. By the way, what
thank
went
you.
wrong?
Nothing really. Just it's what was the name of that startup? That Clubhouse?
Call out.
No, Callout was my
Yeah.
startup. Clubhouse,
Yeah.
if you remember,
Yeah.
was not very different from what Callout was going to be, except Callout was with video and was focused on debates.
Sure.
And Clubhouse, as you can see, has by now like bit the dust, I think.
But
So basically, something like Callout, which is ultimately a Reddit, Facebook, Twitter competitor. If you don't have enough capital and tenacity and to burn capital for 10 years to maybe get 2% market share of the social media space, then it's a cool idea, but it's gonna take some crazy resilience and a huge viral stunt for it to have picked up. And we didn't get there. We had amazing traction. We had some beautiful debates. We could see the light, at least a little glimpse of it. But we had to, it was going to be our livelihood or that.
and you moved to New York for that.
I moved to New York to start Call Out.
Yeah.
And then when I realized that's going to be a 20-year journey, if at all, a side hustle turned out to be my second company, basically.
Okay. And that's why you left New York?
Yeah.
That's why. Where did you go after New York?
London for my shoulder surgery. So I stuck there for about...
Salamtuk.
Allah Salmak,
Yeah.
yeah. No, 3. Yeah, I'm trying to go for 8 so I can get the ninth one for free, like Subway, like a Subway sandwich. But
Rewards card.
yeah.
But so London
That's
went
why you
for
see the
medical
scar?
reasons.
See the scar?
I see it. Yeah.
It was a third shoulder surgery after 2 in Jordan, and so I went to London. And no, I mean, basically, I left New York and I started QO Collective, which is the talent staffing, management consulting, gig economy
Yeah.
business. Since 2018 until now, it was a side hustle that I ran based out of Dubai, but co-locating from different locations, basically. So
And that's what you're doing now full time.
part-time.
Part-time.
Yeah. No,
The podcast being the other half.
podcast is just a hobby because I get bored very easily. ADHD.
But I have to say, and there's a lot of there's many options for watching podcasts these days. Yours is one of the ones that I enjoy watching.
Thank you.
Because it's, I don't want to say it's ad hoc. I'm not demeaning the programming of it, but it's real. It has real people on, and it certainly talks about real topics. It's something that I'm interested in, and I'm really interested in how that came about.
First of all, thank you. Coming from you, especially because I get compliments from a handful of people, sometimes more than a handful, but from certain people, it means a lot. So coming from you means a lot. Thank you. I appreciate it. It came out of pure boredom in COVID. I started listening to Joe Rogan, Lex Friedman, and then I was like, maybe I should chat to people because I'm an extrovert, I feed off this energy. And it still is a hobby. And by the way, the fact that it's ad hoc, which you seem to enjoy, is you could say is also not very intelligent on my end, because what am I doing? Like, I'm talking one day about mental health, the other day about trading crypto, the other day about NFTs.
But that's life. It's so ad hoc, right?
But I'm not trying to monetize this podcast, nor am I trying to be famous. Thankfully, I became somehow a top voice on LinkedIn. I guess somebody in LinkedIn thought I should be. And so earlier we were talking about how sometimes when you do something authentically and you do it out of fun and out of joy, it becomes success. Actually, even the second company that I started as a side hustle, it wasn't something I'm passionate about, nor am I passionate about it now. Okay. I'm very grateful for it. Thank God it turned out to be very, very helpful financially and everything else. But it's not my passion. I mean, but sometimes when you just endeavor into something and you say, Jesus, take the wheel.
It takes a life of its own.
Yeah, it takes a life of its own. Yeah.
Let's go back to
and so I encourage you highly to do it, because podcasts are not meant to be like millions of followers. Like, sure, there's the Joe Rogans and the Theo Vaughns and all of those guys, but like the best part about a podcast is that it's a blog. It's just you get to catch up with a friend like you and I are doing right now.
Absolutely.
What's better? Like, this is right now, right here for me. The best moment of life, like the best thing you can do in life, is to hang out with family, friends, dogs, like whatever it is. There's connection, talk about something useful, stimulate your brain. That for me is like as good as life gets. I mean,
absolutely. And then why not broadcast it?
Why not broadcast it? And it turns out a few people like enjoy it. And then, I mean, so
100%.
I encourage you actually to do it, because it's as simple as
for the record, this setup does not look simple at all. It does, looks like it took a lot of effort.
It gets you. There is a learning curve for it where it starts to take much less time to prepare.
You said something about passion. Yeah. What are you passionate about? Have you thought about that? Does it bother you? I mean, it's something I think about all the time, and I don't have a straight answer for it. But is it important to have passion?
Look, man, so here's where we might keep some part of this conversation in the podcast, or we filter it out. But I'm going to speak straight up. Okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah. To the extent that we are ADHD, finding your passion or
now we are self-diagnosed ADHD. Let's be specific.
Sure, but I mean, every symptom that the ADHD people have, I have. I mean, also I lose attention if a conversation is not interesting enough.
How are you such a good consultant with ADHD?
Bro, ADHD people are smart. Fucking Elon Musk is on the spectrum. He's not ADHD. He's more of a asparagus syndrome. But yeah, I think because it's not, so there was at one point ADD, attention deficiency disorder, and then it became ADHD, which is attention deficiency hyperactivity disorder. So so it's the same thing.
The hyperactivity part.
Yeah, right. So that's, I guess, where I am. Where like if I'm zoned in, I'm like fully in, but then I can get distracted. But the point is, broadly, I've dealt with all the negative or at least many of the negative consequences of whether it's ADHD or not, boredom, anxiety, which then leads to impulsive, addictive tendencies, whether that's, social media that people like, brush off as if it's nothing, which is really much more than nothing. It's a real addiction.
Absolutely.
Down to the classic addictions, alcohol, drugs, gambling, and everything else. And so that's all as a result of me thinking, I don't know what my passion is. I don't know what joy is, or no, I know what joy is, or at least I thought I did, because
I heard your self, what is it called? The content that you created for yourself.
that solo stream.
Content, the solo stream. About joy, and it resonated very well. I think you hit the nail on the head with that one. I think joy is an excellent raison
Purpose.
d'être for absolutely for life,
Yeah.
for sure.
But this is, as simple as that answer seems to be. By the way, a little bit of goosebumps hearing from you that it resonated, because that's why I broadcast, like not because I'm trying to. I'm glad it, even again, it depends who, especially coming from you. So I'm glad that it resonated. But this was right after my retreat. I did. Let me see if I want to put this on the podcast.
Time away by yourself.
No, but it's important to mention to you what I've done, because it's it's important for you and I to talk about this, and then we'll see how we talk about it. So I did an ayahuasca ceremony.
Yeah.
Have I talked to you about it or not yet?
No.
Okay. Are you familiar with the concept?
I've heard about it.
All right. So let's pick it up from here. So basically, I was fortunate enough to be recommended to a really beautiful retreat. And it's a retreat that is a ceremony. A lot of private rituals take place there. A lot of people are doing it. It's trending these days. And it is as life-changing as they say it is. But of course, it's to the extent that you integrate and you don't just go to that retreat and come back and think like everything is solved. And that has been very helpful. Like that was right before I did that solo stream on joy.
Okay.
Because it ends up highlighting to you the simplest things that are actually much more profound than you think they are, which is like, overthinking things, trying to figure things out because you think you're intelligent, all this ADHD bullshit. Sometimes easy does it, joy.
It's much simpler than that.
Yeah, because when you get to experience joy and you talk to people who are going through similar things and stuff, and then you realize like just gratitude, especially gratitude, by the way. Gratitude is one of those things that people tell you should exercise in order to appreciate life and to find passion and so on. One of the best things is when gratitude comes to you naturally, when you don't even have to actually remember what you have to be grateful. If you're just naturally grateful, then you stop worrying about passion and all these things.
So how do you instill that in a person? I mean, you're talking about the retreat, and I was thinking to myself, okay, you have the ability to take some time off, to go have that retreat, to hear these perspectives and get these thoughts from other people. But isn't that something that's not so attainable for the average human being out there? And it's you shouldn't have that as a prerequisite for you to understand what life is about and why being grateful is important and why having joy is important. How do you instill that in a person without having to partake in retreats or because that needs some sort of a financial flexibility and freedom. Absolutely.
First of all, the retreat is hardly in isolation. As it's like this is an ongoing journey, and I'm still going through it. So I'm nowhere near done, and I think it will always be a work in progress. Also, this has started years before I went to the retreat. So a lot of books were read, a lot of podcasts have been listened to, a lot of therapists have been booked. So I don't want to reduce it down to the retreat. And I think a lot of the philosophers that I look up to, like Immanuel Kant and Alan Watts, this age of 40 seems to be that age where if you've had the luxury to be hedonic, but then you realize at 40, what the fuck have I been doing? And trying to... Joseph Campbell has a great book called Arts of Living or something like that. Anyway, it seems to be a lot of the people that I look up to around that age of being 40 years old, a combination of wisdom that you pick up, whether it's reading or talking to people or paying a little bit more attention to your parents, who usually you filter out what they say, oh, fuck, my parents are old or my grandpa.
Now you
no,
get it.
no, yeah, and I think it's like, you know, if you're lucky enough to actually like really capture what they say, and then think about your own experiences, introspect enough. And look, I'm not saying I'm a success case yet. I'm work in progress, but I'm definitely doing better than I was doing last year
Amazing.
and the year before. So the line is heading upwards, and
But that's the point, right? That's the
yeah,
point. That's an individual progress, being able to say, okay, I'm working on myself. I'm focusing on the next, next thing that will add value to myself and those who I love and, my community and who's around.
yeah.
But I go back to okay, first of all, what started all this? The fact that you don't have a passion, or are you trying to figure out what your passion is? Or is it the fact that you got to a point in time where, you've attained a certain level of success, whether it's career or financial or personal, and then you start looking back and assessing, how do I maintain this? How do I make this better?
Believe it or not, it's related to the first thing we said earlier, which is when I don't have, like, I support my own parents, me and my siblings, but that's the extent of my responsibility, right? And that's not much for somebody who lives in Dubai and is successful. So with the lack of bigger responsibility and with the luxury of having been well-traveled, cultured, having started 2 companies, worked at consulting, ironically, you run into a void of boredom, anxiety, like you've seen it all, you've done it all, like what next? Nothing, you become jaded. And I think that's like a dopamine deficiency, either natural or I caused it. Doesn't matter. There was some sort of boredom. Also, there was this idea that I should be an entrepreneur and build this like next Facebook that I've always enjoyed that idea. And then that caused all sorts of anxieties and combined with, ironically, abundance. So a combination of, ironically, thank God, abundance, experience, boredom, and I suppose to some extent having to meet the expectations that have been set for me by myself, by my parents. I've always been told that I'm a smart kid, I should achieve things and so on. And I'm thankful for it, because despite what it brought with it as negative consequences, if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have achieved what I've achieved.
Right.
So like you're a parent now, like I'm not a parent, but I think it's a good idea to convince, or not to convince, but like to, in a balanced way, tell your child that they can achieve things. Because if you don't do that, it's hard for them to for them to succeed in whatever it is. Don't tell them how to succeed, but
Right.
but doing it too much can, God forbid, as we see with those Stanford kids who are 20, 21 years old, they commit suicide because they've been expectations have been set so high in a very passive aggressive way by their parents. And those, usually a lot of them are actually girls, and they go to soccer school, valedictorian type students, and like they commit suicide.
You're meant to do this. You're meant to be this. You're meant to achieve that at a certain age. But that's the point. I mean, that's what you were saying. You got to a point where you saw a void,
Yeah,
right?
avoid. Yeah,
And that void came because there was certain expectations. Maybe you've met them. Maybe
lack
you've
of
exceeded
adversity.
them. Lack of adversity.
Yeah,
That's an important one.
yeah.
You didn't face adversity in your life?
Not the kind that would have to make me feel like I just need to deal with the adversity, and that's the only thing that's on my brain. Like the adversity that I have to deal with is nothing compared to what some people go through.
100%.
So when you don't have adversity, you have
So you have the luxury of being bored.
it's a luxury, and it's a curse at the same time.
Well,
And yeah, okay, good things come out of it. The podcast, I don't know, like creative other. There are good things that I'm proud of that I've done, but for the most part, if you don't know what to do, if you don't know how to be happy or satisfied, and you have abundance, that can be a problem. But if you've
Absolutely.
learned wisdom and happiness or so on, and then you have the abundance, then that's a great
So
situation.
it goes
to be
back to the question I was asking. How do you instill that in people, regardless of your circumstance, right? Because you see people with lack of abundance, with a lot of happiness, a lot of purpose, a lot of gratefulness, and you see people with abundance that are struggling.
in. Yeah, I'll tell you what I think the answer is. First of all, it's a 2-part answer. The first part is standard shit. Read books, see what other philosophers have arrived to the same, what answers they've arrived at for the same question, like the standard stuff. But that's not the only way. I think a lot of people just brush off the meditation, retreat, like whatever. My boy, enough whining.
But this is يعني
And it's important because a lot of people think like, fuck it, man, what's meditation? Or like, what's a book? Or like, I have a bigger problem to deal with than what a book can teach me, or what a retreat will teach me, or a conversation with another fellow man or a woman. Like, and I think, or therapy, fuck therapy. And look, a lot of it is bullshit, but do it. It can't make it worse. Or it could make it worse, but it's it's much less likely to make it worse. Worst case, it's gonna do nothing. Possibly it could help. To just brush off self-improvement and self-growth is probably why a lot of people get stuck. And so to answer,
No, I don't think anybody's brushing it off. I think what the context or the form of that self growth is, because the way you're telling me what self growth is right now, involves having the time to read books, having the time to go on a retreat, having the time and the financial ability to speak to a therapist,
Yeah.
etc. Many people don't.
yeah,
How do these people find, purpose or just gratification in life?
I think
it's
adversity.
simpler than that.
I think adversity. I think a lot of people who have to like just make ends meet, and they're going through war or they're in debt and they just need to make sure food is on the table. They don't have the capacity to think about.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
just being present.
Yeah,
I think being present is an important part of that.
I think it's more like, unfortunately, like you're a hamster on a wheel, but like you don't have the capacity to think about purpose and anxiety. You just gotta make ends meet. You have a family to feed.
صح.
These people are in some way blessed. Yani, I'm not like, I would not want to be somebody who doesn't have freedom and choice, and all I gotta do is grind it out. But like,
But if freedom of choice comes with anxiety and
course.
lack of purpose,
Of course.
and
Of course.
which
Yeah.
one's better?
I'd always take the freedom one, even with its anxieties. Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of freedom.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But freedom, freedom made me gain weight, lose money gambling, drugs, alcohol, you name it. Sure, I'm learning how to undo all these things, but yeah, I'd take that any day over slaving. I mean, that's like one way of answering it. The other one is going to sound kind of weird coming from me, but I'll say it anyway because it's true. But I've become more spiritual and more...
There you go.
yeah.
That's the answer I'm looking for.
Yeah? Okay, well, I
No,
hope so.
that's not what I'm looking for. But it's really about what you can do on a day-to-day basis without the...
Dude, I've been to church for the first time in 20 years, like multiple times. And okay, I'm not like your traditional Catholic Christian guy who's Bible thumping. Like I was brought up Christian, and then like, I don't know how long was the last time I went to church, but I didn't go to church in this kind of like traditional Christian literal version, but I just had those few moments where I went and like I submitted and I surrendered and then again in those retreats, similar experience, different context. There's something about that is like just the champion of all solutions is to have the humility to just surrender to something good and superior, and like that metaphor, let Jesus take the wheel, whatever religion you are, is great.
Because that emanates from the fact that if you boil down to the essence of life, at the end of the day, you're so insignificant in the grand scheme of things, right? Not insignificant in the sense that your life has no meaning. And life has a lot of meaning and for good purpose. But the things that stress you out, the things that make you, question life, should not be so overbearing.
Yeah,
In the grand scheme of things,
you're right.
right?
100%. That's why, for example, so I went to a few masses.
I'm preaching. I don't practice
no.
this, but
Sure,
I should be practicing.
We're both in the same place, man. But look at the difference between two masses I went to in Dubai, right? One of them, the priest was more about like soft, like love, sort of not non-obligatory. Come to church not because you have to, but because like. So he was more
You
about
want to.
yeah, like that's what much more focused on love. Forgiveness, blessings, that type of thing. And another priest, different style, same message, but more aggressive, more kind of like, we're here, we're sinners, Jesus came to forgive us. Like, all of that is true, right? But the first one was they needed so much more. That kind of like soft, kind of like less scaring you, more. But just imagine how much the delivery of religion or spirituality or raising somebody without any of that matters in terms of making you gravitate towards putting your faith in whatever it is, whatever prophet or God you believe in. It makes the biggest difference.
Absolutely.
That kind of like freaking you out type of way of teaching your religion or just raising you socially can backfire like crazy. versus just like letting you.
The whole lead by fear mentality.
Yeah,
Get out of that.
yeah.
So what keeps you up at night today?
Well,
I mean,
I take Xanax to sleep.
from
Not anymore. Not anymore. I used to, but not anymore. Actually, I'm glad. Like there was a time when I had to actually take a lot of sleep aid stuff
why?
because I was. I don't know how many fingers you have.
I think everyone goes through.
No, but I put myself through a bit of a tough, like trading stocks, crypto on margin, starting a company that I was running by myself. Again, a personal relationship that.
So that's all adversity, by the way.
That's all adversity.
Yeah. So you got through that.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm a therapist now.
No, but thank you. But this is, I feel like I should pay you £250 for.
Is that the going rate?
Yeah. That's not the kind of adversity I was referring to when so it's one thing if you're a man with a family and there are rockets flying over your head and you have family to feed.
Right.
That's the adversity I was referring to that will liberate you from the anxieties of life. Then there is the whole like, oh, should I get married? Should I not? But like, should I start this company or not that company? That's a different type of adversity that is jaded adversity that will lead you to anxiety because it's freedom. The other one is like, I don't care how, just get me out of this shit.
Right.
Another one is more like options. And then options are, if you're not, can get you really anxious, especially if you abuse the capacity to tackle those options by medicating, right? And then it gets worse because it becomes a vicious cycle.
You get dependent on it.
Well, yeah, but also like it messes up with your decision making too. So like, say you were 80% capable of maybe resolving whatever choices you had. Now you have 40% capacity because you're drunk and high and you have 5 positions of trade open that are 6 figures.
That you should not have opened.
Yeah, but they're all like medicating and so they're all coping mechanisms is what I'm trying to say. And look, again, fortunately, I'm very much out of this place now, and it's still a work in progress because here and there I do allow myself to.
It's an indulgence now.
It's an indulgence more than it is. Yeah, exactly. But that alone is really transformational because it's one thing when you're dependent on it, and it's another thing when it's not controlling you, you're controlling it, and you're allowing yourself once every 3 months versus 3 times a day. That's a huge difference.
Absolutely.
And that's the kind of difference I'm talking about, literally.
That's success, right? That's being able to overcome a certain difficult, part of your life or position you're in. These are small wins. You should celebrate.
Dude, you should be a therapist, by the way.
I've thought about that many times. That's why I was telling you at the beginning that why I enjoy listening to podcasts or why I'd love to see myself hosting a podcast is because I think this is the form of therapy that people strive for today. It's about hearing hearing other people's views on aspects that they're going through, hearing different perspectives, because everyone's going through something. Everyone wants to get advice. I think there's a lot of things that people say that can resonate. I was listening to something the other day that, from a particular person that I don't really care about, but, they said something and it resonated with me, and I started following the podcast and started listening more and more just because, it's important to listen to other opinions. It's important to understand, to know that other people are facing the same issues that you're facing.
Yeah.
And to get different perspectives from it. So that's why podcast, I think, is becoming very mainstream, very important, very popular.
Yeah,
to a certain extent.
And the more the better. The only thing I have as a concern about podcasts or in general people sharing, first of all, I want to be clear. It's much better for people like you and me and others to share because for those who are also going through something similar, to know that they're not alone. That's always better.
What's the problem we're going through?
I'm about to come to the problem. The problem is that thing that they call the Werther effect, which I don't know if you caught up in my last. There was another.
I missed that one.
So the problem is that when you start to listen to people that you admire, going through something that you're going through, like depression or addiction, but you admire them because they're stand-up comedians or artists. I think it has this effect that it gives you the green light to be like, well, look at Robin Williams. I mean, or Robbie Williams. He killed himself, but look how successful he was. Or look at Theo Vaughn. He's great comedian, great podcast
So
host.
it's
But
okay
he used
for
to be-
me to be feeling this.
to do, no, not just to be feeling this, to be myself an addict,
Yeah.
to be myself suicidal too. So it gives you.
No, I don't know. Yeah, okay.
No, man, this is how it happens. There, copycat suicides, which is the Werther effect, is that. It's like when you admire an artist so much to the point that when they kill themselves and you're going through a hard time, you go and you kill yourself too. So in a way, opening up is good because you're not alone. You hear people, especially if they're like putting on a good message out, which is then called the Papageno effect, which is Papageno effect. All of it is just messaging and framing. How you portray your experience to those listening can either move somebody, push somebody off the edge,
Of the cliff.
off the cliff, yeah, or put them on the right track. It's all about how you frame the story. But then when you go to listen to these podcasts, some of them are just talking about it so openly that you don't know if the person listening is going to be like, I'm going to snort the line of heroin because, you know, the host who I love spoke about his heroin addiction. He seems to have it together. So if he's done it, then I'll do it too. Like, you know, like
Yeah,
that kind of
but-
shit can happen too.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the outcome we're looking for.
No,
or
of
you
course
want
not.
to add that. But I think the point I was trying to make is we've been people have been very private about experiences in general, about what they're going through, about talking about it publicly. I think podcasts, and not all podcasts, most podcasts are about certain topics that are very, business oriented or politics or, sports or etc. But general live podcasts are they bring people that you thought are immune to these issues that you're going through, and they put them in the spotlight, and they say, okay, are you going through this? How are you dealing with it? And you realize that people that you admire and you look up to and you think are immune to certain circumstances that you might be part of are actually not immune to it. And they are dealing with the same issues you're dealing on a day-to-day basis.
Even the most invincible, yani.
Even the most invincible. And you get different perspectives. Some may resonate, some you may throw in the garbage. But the point is, the more you communicate about it, the more you hear about it, the more empowered you are to make a change or do something about it for your own person.
By the way, I'm glad it's happening in the Arab world too, because that's one place where it's been stigmatized.
صح.
And maybe like the US, Europe, they're ahead of us 10, 20 years, but now you have like men groups. I had a friend staying with me, his name is Tariq Masarwe. He goes to men groups, like I think 10, I don't know how many people there are, but they are men who share problems openly about sexuality, fucking premature ejaculation, all the way down to I didn't get money, like, you know, everything and anything that could happen. And they sit and talk about it openly. Can you imagine? Like, I don't know what that's like.
I would have never imagined.
But like, that's
either.
great. But that's to your point. Like,
absolutely,
you know, I'm in a place of gratitude today. Tomorrow, you might find me.
Why? I mean, this is something that you should work on. It's a permanent thing.
Yeah.
Make it a permanent thing.
Yeah.
You feel gratitude today.
Listen, one big theme is less control. Don't try to control things. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
I've
very
learned that
simple.
with time.
Yeah, exactly. You asked earlier a question earlier. How do you ingrain this in people? That kind of wisdom comes with time. How many I've heard don't control things from when I was 20, 25.
But then you wake up one day
Eventually,
and
you
you
realize
get
like
it.
just control it. Not because I'm lazy. Like control what you can control. You
Everything
said it earlier.
My daughter told me
Badia,
that,
right? You
Yeah,
said
she
exactly.
Stop stressing about this. You can't control it.
She asked you, can you control it? No, then don't stress about it. Profound, my God. By the way, God bless. That's incredible. Coach Elias,
Habibi.
Lovely having you, man.
Well,
Finally.
it really was a pleasure.
Hopefully not the last time.
La, I want to do
Definitely
this
not
again.
the last
Definitely. And
time.
I'm learning from you, for sure. This is a course for me.
Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Yalla, habibi. Thanks a lot.
Cheers.
When you look around,